And welcome back to the Jamie Ross Show. I'm joined in studio today by the one and only Vern Miller. Vern, you've probably seen him in many bands in the area. His latest is Shaky Ground.
Shaky Ground.
And you've been in the Caterpillar book.
Yep.
And you have a big reunion show coming up.
Yes, a reunion show with my band from the 60s, The Remains.
The Remains. And so The Remains, your big thing was you toured with the Beatles.
1966, we did their U.S. tour.
Okay. And when did the Remains start?
The Remains actually began in 1964 at Boston University. We met in a college dorm, Miles Standish Hall in Kenmore Square in Boston. Wow. And actually we met in 63, Barry Tashin and Chip Damiani. I met them in 63 when we were freshmen, and the three of us started doing a little playing together in 63 in the spring, and we jammed together in the dormitory. And then in 64, Bill Briggs came to BU as a freshman, and the four of us got together and started The Remains.
Wow. And then what was the progression? Did you hit right away? Did it have the local draw? Or?
It happened to us really fast.
Okay.
I guess is the best way to explain it. We started playing at a place in Kenmore Square called the Rathskeller. And it was like one night a week, Monday nights or Tuesday nights, I don't remember. And within a very short period of time, there were lines down the street, around the corner to Fenway Park. Wow. And record labels heard about us and started coming down and started asking us about recording. So about 2 months after we put the band together, we signed with Epic Records, which was part of CBS. Wow. And by that Christmas vacation, we were in the studio cutting our first single. So we had really only been together about 3-4 months when we were signed and started recording.
Wow. And the Boston area, were there a lot of other similar bands like you out there?
No.
No.
There was a vibrant music scene in Boston. There always has been, as far as I remember. The folk scene was really thriving then. Club 47 in Cambridge. The rock and roll scene was kind of newer, I think, then. And what we were doing was a little different from what a lot of the other bands that were up there were doing, in that we were really kind of rooted in rhythm and blues, because we had liked that kind of music when we were kids. It's something we realized after we met and started, playing together, that we were kind of closet lovers of blues and rhythm and blues when we were younger. And so that was a very strong influence in our music. And also Barry had been to Europe the summer between our freshman and sophomore years. And stuff like the Stones were surfacing, which was kind of a repackaging of American music, really. It's stuff that had been in our backyards for, at least a decade or two. And the American youth weren't really listening to that kind of music, and the English bands like the Stones and the Beatles and the Animals, and there were a lot of groups coming out of England that were really into that kind of music and kind of reinterpreting it and repackaging it. It was becoming popular over here.
Right.
So Barry had brought back a lot of LPs and a lot of ideas at the time. And so we were kind of influenced by a lot of that. And there weren't a lot of bands doing that same kind of thing.
Yeah, it always seemed to start in England and then head over here.
But it really started here
And then,
And
yeah.
ended up over there.
Right.
There were these connoisseurs of blues and rhythm and blues over there that just kind of remarketed it, and it sold here, became
Yeah.
very popular.
Yeah, and there is a documentary out about the remains called America's Lost Band.
Yes.
It's not available commercially.
It is not
yet,
available commercially yet,
but
no.
I was thinking possibly at some point maybe we'll have a local screening.
That would be nice. That would be wonderful.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
And if there's and we'll have Vern there, and if there's any questions I missed, maybe we could do a Q&A.
Great.
With the viewing.
Great.
Now, so then, 1966 comes along. Who gets? How do you hear about that? You're going to be the opening band for the Beatles, and what was your reaction to that?
By 1966, we had quit college in the middle of the Vietnam War. Kind of a gutsy move, but we survived. And we were really going back and forth between Boston and New York. And we had gotten an apartment in New York. We realized we kind of had to broaden our base a little bit more. We had been playing all throughout New England because the college entertainment scene was like really opening up. All colleges were having large rock and roll shows. And so we were doing that, and we wanted to expand. So we moved to New York and got a New York manager. And as it turned out, there was a man named Bob Bonus who worked at an agency called GAC. And GAC was the booking agent for the Beatles. And Bob heard us play either at Trudy Heller's or it might have been a place called Ondine's, and wanted to be involved in our management. And so he was kind of hanging out with us, and we had already started working with a manager in New York, and they were interested in working together with the Remains. And Bob, it turns out, was involved with booking the Beatles tour and was like an advance man on the Beatles tour. And he just came to us one day and said, hey, would you guys like to be the opening act for the Beatles tour this summer? So we had recently made a pact between the four of us that we were no longer going to open for anybody. We were going to be... Well, I think it took about 3 seconds to break our pact.
Change that one,
And I said, this is a little different. Yeah, sure, we'd love to do it.
Oh my God.
So we ended up doing the tour.
Okay. And it was, what was it, about a 2-month tour?
It was actually 3 weeks.
3 weeks, okay.
Yeah, I think we did 17 shows in 21 days, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah, and there seemed to be a lot of controversy going on at that time with the Beatles. Was that any concern of yours? Like there was, that John Lennon made that?
Yes. John had made that comment. Really, it was taken out of context and blown up about them being more popular than Jesus.
Right.
And that really created a turmoil in especially the Bible Belt areas, down in Memphis and things like that.
Right.
They were more concerned than we were.
Yeah.
I think they were, well, I think it was a cherry bomb or a firecracker went off in one of the shows.
Right.
And George Harrison thought he'd been shot. They were not very easy feeling about going into certain areas. We were very, very heavily guarded.
I see.
Especially down south. The show that comes to mind where I remember like just being surrounded by police and Secret Service agents was the show in Memphis, in the Memphis Coliseum. We were met at the airport. Instead of being put in limousines, we were all put in a bus and just surrounded. And I remember looking outside of the bus and just seeing this wall of police and Secret Service people on motorcycles and cars all around us and stuff, because they were concerned.
Yeah.
There was genuine worry about their well-being.
Wow. And it is also like what happened, the Beatles, I heard a lot of the shows weren't even sold out. Like at that point, what was the feeling at that time about
I
it?
don't know if every seat was sold. At the time, having the role that the Remains had and doing something like that, it just seemed like these audiences were just immense because we were playing all major ballparks. So it just seemed, I guess I couldn't say it was overwhelming, but it had the potential to be that. You'd step out on stage and there was just this wall of people.
Right. Wow. And how about the final show? I think you had a comment on one of the photos of John Lennon or something. And
The San Francisco show, Candlestick Park, the last show. That was the last show the Beatles ever did, the last stadium show. I think they set up and played on top of the Apple Records building or EMI Studios building at one point later on. But after the Beatles got off stage, John passed a comment like, "That's it for the Beatles." And understandably so. When you experience something like what they experienced, they become almost prisoners of their own device, in a sense, you know, prisoners of their own success. And they were very aware of losing their individuality. They were known as the Beatles. So, you know, George Harrison, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, John Lennon weren't like these separate entities to themselves, especially, as much as they were a part of this group, which was a very special thing to them. But they kind of wanted to be themselves at that point and wanted some personal space. And they were also heading in different directions musically. They were very interesting human beings that had passions that were taking them in different directions, spiritually, musically, personally. And those things were becoming more important, and I think being inhibited by the collective thing known as the Beatles. So they really, it became very obvious, kind of sitting back on my part and kind of looking and letting things unfold and observing that they were really ready to move on beyond being, I hate to say just the Beatles, but to them, that's really what it had become, you know?
Right. And then from there, what did the Remains do?
After the tour, first of all, our original drummer, Chip, left the band just before the Beatles tour. I think that being on the road constantly as we were and playing as much as we were was really taking its toll on him a little bit. And he decided he wasn't going to do this anymore. So we actually hired a drummer for the tour, a great drummer, N.D. Smart, who went on to play with Leslie West and Ian and Sylvia in Great Speckled Bird. Excellent player. And he did a wonderful job on the tour. But it wasn't the same. It wasn't those four guys that had sat in that room in the college dorm and jammed and kind of grown up very quickly together in a period of a little less than 2 years, really. So after the tour, we decided to disband. We were, you know, from the outside looking in, we might have appeared to be on the cusp of really national success. And who knows what would have happened if we had stayed together. But we, you know, we made the decision. Okay, we've had a great run. It doesn't feel quite the same without Chip. Let's take a break.
Yeah.
and we took a break. And but interestingly enough, we've always gotten back together and played
Yeah. And with the original drummer?
with the original drummer.
Oh, wow.
And so now when we go out on the road, we go out with the 4 original band members, which we've always done since the Beatles tour. We played a few gigs after the tour. And then after that, we actually took a break. And then when we started getting back together again to play every so often, it was always the original 4, because that's where the magic was.
Right, right. Yeah, and also before the Beatles tour, you did do Ed Sullivan too, and that's on YouTube?
Yes,
I can see that.
we did the Ed Sullivan 65 Christmas show.
Christmas show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
A little scary. I think there were like 14 million people viewing it. And we taped it. We had been playing at Trudy Heller's in the city. It was a popular club in the city. And Ed Sullivan actually came into the club and heard us play. And asked us if we'd like to do the Ed Sullivan Christmas show.
Christmas show. That's a funny...
that was another 3-second decision. You know. Sure, we'd like to do it.
Why not? Why not? And then after the remains, you said, I want to teach music in the Maplewood school system.
Well, no, I hadn't made that choice yet. That hadn't come to fruition yet. I actually went back to Boston for a while, and I played in a band where Donna Summer was the lead singer.
Oh, right.
Straight out of the church in Roxbury, Massachusetts. Her real last name is Gaines, Donna Gaines, and just an amazing voice. And so I played in a band with Donna for a little while. And I also went back to college to finish up my bachelor's degree. And then I put together an 11-piece blues band called Swallow. I started my master's work at BU, and then Swallow signed with Warner Brothers. So I went on the road for 5 years with Swallow. And we did 2 albums on Warner's. And then after that, what did I do? I played in a couple of other bands up in New England.
Yeah.
And then I decided it was a little, late in my life to be calling a suitcase home, so to speak. Gotcha. I was on the road a lot. I had been on the road a real lot for a lot of my, my younger life. I came back here to Jersey, where I was originally from, and I started substitute teaching, because I had gotten my degree in music education. So I got my certification here in New Jersey. I started subbing and, kind of networking with people. The way people networked back then was you picked up a telephone and called somebody you knew years ago and said, "Hi, I'm back in town." And there was an opening in South Orange, Maplewood, and the director of the music department called me and asked if I'd be interested in it. And I came down and interviewed for the job and got the job. It was late in the year. It was in March, I think of 1976. And I took the job, and I was here for 31 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And I loved it. This is an amazing community. I don't know of other communities quite like this. It just kept unfolding how culturally aware so many people in this community are, and the well of talented young people that I saw, walk in my door over the 31 years was just amazing. It was wonderful to teach kids whose parents were so supportive of music, and to see so many kids with that passion.
Yeah, yeah.
And they wanted to develop it. And a lot of them moved on and are involved in music, which is nice.
You still keep in touch with some of them?
I have over 2,000 friends on Facebook.
There you go.
And many of them are former students.
Right.
And
Wow.
it just means the world to me.
Oh, that's great.
I played with Shaky Grounds. I'm trying to remember what month it was. It might have been in April. I can't remember because I do a lot of playing. And one of my former students sat in, a guy named Marcus Miller, great sax player. And he sat in and jammed with us while we were playing, and I'm going, "Man, I remember this little seventh grader, who just wailed when he was a kid, and then he walks in and sits in and jams with us, and it's just wonderful. I love it.
That's great. That's great. Well, if half of your Facebook friends come out to, this is in Brooklyn, right?
Yes, I'm playing in Brooklyn with the Remains.
The Bell House.
Next Friday at the Bell House, June 7th.
Yeah.
Yes, the show starts at 8 o'clock.
Okay. Well, there's more info back here and down here, and again, thanks for coming in. That is really great.
Thank you.
To finally talk to you about
Enjoyed
all
it.
this
It was
stuff.
fun. Thank you very
Right.
much.
And stay tuned. We'll have another show upcoming in a while. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Cue theme music.
Hey, it's Jamie. Come on in and take a seat for a while with me. Yeah, Jamie. We could just form a thing to take for a while. You know it doesn't really matter for your life for a while, 'cause you can try to find a name to decide. Every little thing is gonna find more. Stay a while, stay a while. With Jamie, oh yeah, with Jamie, oh yeah, with Jamie, ooh, with Jamie, oh yeah, with Jamie.